Okay. This session is officially started. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Helen Wu. I am the Senior Director overseeing Thunderbird Career Management Center. Definitely very interested in hearing a little bit more about everyone's career stories and see how we can help you with internship and full-time job, all that kind of stuff. And today I'm really excited that we have Professor Andrew Inkpen, who originally is from Canada, been living in the US for a very, very long time. He is our energy sector, oil and gas expert. He's our strategy professor, just a really, really smart guy. And today, Professor, please jump in, correct me if I'm wrong. So the format of the session today will be mainly Q&A. And then but before we jump to Q&A, is there anything you want to quickly share with the students to set the stage?
Well, first of all, I'm actually in Canada. I'm not in the US. So, and now, can you make me co-host there, Helen?
Yeah, definitely. Let me do that.
So a few of you from my class know that I'm in Canada. I came here in the summer and I've stayed. I haven't come back to Arizona yet. I'm on the east coast of Canada, and I'll let me see. I'll show, this is where I am. Well, this is where I was last week because we had a hurricane last week. But this is where I am right now. This is the view from my house. And this is what it should look like. And that's the Atlantic Ocean here. So this is Nova Scotia. And if you go straight out that way, just keep going, you would end up in England. So, and that's classic Nova Scotia picture. And that's also why I'm still here. So, because it's a fantastic place for this. So this is where I grew up and lived here until, I went to university here, actually locally here, and I did a degree in accounting and started working for an accounting firm, and it was okay. I was an auditor for a while with one of the big firms, what we call the Big Four, which is now KPMG, and it was good experience, good job. I became a chartered accountant, which they now call them CPAs. So I was a CPA, but I stopped paying my fees, so I'm no longer a CPA. But I decided I didn't really want to keep doing that. So I quit my job and I went on a big trip and traveled all around Australia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asia, and decided that I really wanted to do international things. I'd never been anywhere really until then. So came back, did my MBA in Canada, and then got my first job after my MBA in Singapore. And it was actually an academic job. And I didn't know much about being an academic, but National University of Singapore offered me a job, and it seemed like a great place to go. And it was a great place. Ended up living there for 4 years, came back to Canada, did my PhD, ended up in Philadelphia for a while at a university called Temple University. And then Thunderbird made me an offer, and I came to Thunderbird a long time ago, 25 years ago, and have never left. And it's been a great place to do what I wanted to do, which was international stuff. I mean, I've traveled all over the world working, lived in France and the Czech Republic, last year in Germany, and I'm supposed to go to Denmark in January, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'm supposed to have a sabbatical in Copenhagen, but probably not going to happen. So I'm trying to figure out if I can roll that forward maybe to next September. So, but yeah, Thunderbird's been a great place for me. International and good colleagues, done a lot of neat things and good students. So that's kind of my background. So I was an accountant, and I'm not an accountant anymore. I'm a recovering accountant, or I recovered. And now I guess I'm a strategy guy, international guy. So that's me. Happy to answer any questions about what I've done or what you guys want to do or what you're interested in.
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking first, how did you first found the Singapore job?
How did I find the job? How did I find the job when I got there, or how did I actually get the job?
Both.
I got the job because the the university placed an advertisement. Back in those days, there was no internet, and the university placed an ad in the Toronto, the sort of main Canada newspaper called the Toronto Globe and Mail. And I saw the ad, and I wrote to them letters back in those days, and they had a New York office. So I wrote to the New York office, and the guy who ran the New York office said, "Well, I'm coming to Toronto to do some interviews." I was close to Toronto, so I said, so we set up a time to meet. And then when we met, he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Well, I'm from Nova Scotia." He says, "Oh, my daughter lives in Nova Scotia." And I said, "Oh, that's interesting." And he said she married a guy named, doesn't matter who it is, but I said, "I know that person. That's his father is his father is my father's lawyer." And the guy said, yeah, well, that's right. He's a lawyer and all this. And he said, "Yeah, okay." So, and then I got a job. So it didn't have much to do, I don't think, with my potential to be an academic or anything. It's because I knew the guy's daughter's family. So that's how the world works, I guess. And Singapore was fantastic. Singapore in those days, when I went to Singapore, there was only 2.5 million people in the country. And now there's 5.5 million. So it was a very different place. It didn't feel particularly crowded. In those days, because I was an expat, we had pretty good expat package. We got a house and it was good. I was only 26 years old. It was fantastic. So, and I went back again. So I went back for 2002 for 12 months in 2002. And then I've traveled there about 50 times. So I really know the place pretty well, but I can't take the climate anymore. After living in Arizona for so long, I just can't take the humidity in Arizona, in Singapore. It's too hot, too humid. So, but great place if you ever get a chance to go. Easy place to live.
Singapore.
Yes. And great countries around it. Malaysia to the north, Indonesia, Thailand. I mean, they're so close, and they're all really great places to travel. And so good, definitely good place to, Southeast Asia is a fantastic place.
I know we have some students who are very interested in pursuing PhD as well. And I'm wondering, you got your PhD, and how did you figure out the focus area or what type of area you want to teach, whatever?
Well, when you when you enter a PhD program, you select. I mean, if you're a finance person or you're a marketing person, or so you kind of select the broad area that you're going into, and so I had decided that I wasn't going to do accounting, even though that's what my background was. I wanted to do strategy. I didn't know much about it, but that's what I thought was interesting. I liked industry, studying industries and companies. And so you kind of have to know that much, but that's all you know. And then when you get in, then everything gets narrowed down like significantly. And it's just a lot of luck who you happen to work with. And so.
Sierra, you have a question?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Professor, for doing this. I appreciate you being here. Obviously, as you know, and not everyone knows on this call, but the Faculty Career Impact Program is my baby. That's what I focus on for the CMC mostly. So thank you for being here. But one of the questions I had for you is, obviously we're all at Thunderbird because we want to live and work overseas or have some sort of job where we work with people overseas, if we want to stay in our home countries. So what's your biggest advice for getting overseas for all of us?
You know, it's not quite the same as it, you know, the original Thunderbird was founded to do, basically to send people overseas. That was the original Thunderbird. You know, it was to bring people in, Americans typically, back in the day, it was sort of 70% Americans. And then the non-Americans were mostly Latin Americans and a few Europeans. And the objective was to place people in banks in particular and in marketing jobs. That was the two sort of mainstreams that people went to. And the reason is that you know, all of these multinational companies staff their international offices, at least the management side of their international offices, were all staffed by by Germans or Swedes or Americans or whatever. And, you know, of course, that's all changed. And so it's a little different now. I don't know if it's harder, but it's definitely different. You know, it's not sort of, it's just not the same. Multinational companies don't run their companies the same way. And, you know, when I went to Singapore, and I knew many expats, and Singapore is a hub for, you know, for Asian, well, in those days, Asian headquarters. Now it's perhaps less, it's more for Southeast Asian, and, you know, China and Shanghai and so on have taken over some of the Asian side, but nobody was going to Shanghai in those days. So I knew many expats, and it was all the same thing. They had come from a home country. They were on typically 3-year contracts or 2-year contracts. They had the expat package, the house, the car, the schools, the trip home in the summer with the kids, and, you know, and there was nobody, I didn't meet a single person in Singapore that just arrived in Singapore and said, you know, I think I'll look for a job. A, you couldn't do it. You couldn't get a visa or an employment pass, impossible. And B, you'd never get hired. And you know, now it's totally different. There's you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of people in Singapore, tens of thousands, who just showed up and, you know, went knocking on doors the same way you would do anywhere looking for a job. And Hong Kong is the same way. And China, a little more challenging, but still possible, I think. And so that's the big difference from when I, you know, even though I was a university guy, I was still, the idea when I went there was, you're going to come and then you're going to leave. My contract had a flight to Singapore and a flight from Singapore home, because they knew I would leave, because everybody left. Nobody ever stayed. And now people go and they stay and they buy houses and they have families. So there's a lot more opportunities in terms of how you do it. But the idea of, you know, joining JP Morgan Chase and 2 years later they send you to Singapore, that's a little harder today than it used to be. But there's way more opportunities, because you can sit in Phoenix and try to find a job in Singapore and then go to Singapore and work there. You couldn't do that certainly in my day. But the track of, you know, multinationals staffing their, you know, offices. I used to work a lot with Ericsson, the Swedish company. And they had offices all over the world. And every single president, general manager was a Swede. That's the way they did it. And, you know, that's, all of that has changed. So there's more ways to do it. And I have to confess, you know, I haven't done it for a long time, so I don't know all those ways, but definitely it's easier and it's harder. Let's put it that way. You probably have to do more on your own than the Thunderbird grad of 1980, but you have more opportunities probably than the Thunderbird grad of 1980. Because the Thunderbird grad of 1980 had to take a job probably with an American company and then get sent overseas. And then they would bring them back, and you didn't have a whole lot of control over your career. You guys have a lot more control over your careers, but I think it's, you know, you have to work a lot harder to find find your opportunity. But labor markets are very efficient compared to what they used to be. You know, there was no labor market in Southeast Asia. It didn't exist. It was just an expat market of people sent there. So that's what I would say. Again, I don't know all the, all of the ways you could do it, but there's just a lot more ways you can do it. And of course, we have our alumni as well, which are an enormous resource, fantastic resource.
Thank you.
CJ, you have a question?
Yeah, I forgot my original question, but I'll jump into something that's kind of more specific to me, going back to your academic career.
Yep.
So like primary profession have a little bit of flexibility time-wise. And I'm kind of interested in pursuing a graduate program post Thunderbird part-time, either a PhD. I was looking at some English ones which don't require some basic courses. You kind of go straight into the resource. Or a DBA in the United States. Are the DBAs seen as equivalent as a PhD? I think there are a couple of professors at Thunderbird that have a DBA, or is it preferential to go focus on, like, if you're going to go part-time?
There's only 2 DBAs that I'm aware of in the United States that I would say are equivalent to a PhD. A PhD is just Latin for Doctor of Philosophy, and a DBA is just English initials for Doctor of Business Administration. The only 2 that I think are the equivalent are the Harvard DBA and the Indiana DBA. And any other DBA that's out there is, not to be too critical, but is kind of a watered down. It's not made to be, if Thunderbird were recruiting somebody, we would not probably look at somebody with a DBA from Case Western Reserve University, for example. They have one, because they're not really intended to train people to be academics. They're intended to give people an opportunity to dive deeper into a particular subject area, and then probably either go back to what they were doing or join a consulting firm or something like that. So I would, unless that's what you want to do. I mean, if you want to get into the academic world, you need a real PhD or maybe a Harvard DBA, not one of those other DBAs. They won't get you into the academic world. They might get you into the consulting world or some world that you want to go to. And just a quick word on the English programs. Yes, it's true, the English programs, the difference between English programs and US programs and Canadian programs. Canadian and US programs have years of courses you have to take. Maybe 2.5 years of coursework. And then you start a major research project. In the UK, there's no coursework. You just go and you find a professor that will agree to work with you, and you start a research project. The good news is it can be much faster. The bad news is the completion rate is much lower than in the US, because a lot of people don't know how to do research. They don't know anybody else in the program. They do it part-time, so they're hardly ever there, and they don't finish. So there's pros and cons. I know people that have done English PhDs and have done very, very well in their careers. I mean, lots of people in England, but I know people, I had a friend in Singapore who kept his job in Singapore, did an English PhD, flew back in maybe twice a year, and has had a fantastic academic career. So pros and cons to everything.
No, I appreciate the information on the DBAs. I had a friend who did a PhD at London School of Economics and was in the US and traveling around Europe, having a pretty good time the entire time, but just, managed her own work schedule.
Yeah.
But yeah, long-term was interested in teaching, and blending teaching and career.
Well, if someone is seriously interested in an academic career, I would probably advise you not to go to the UK. That would be my advice. Just knowing what I know about those programs, I would say go to a US program or a Canadian program that has structure and a high degree of certainty that you're going to finish. Nobody can guarantee that. It's not like a Thunderbird MGM where you take enough courses and pass them all, you'll finish the degree. That's not the way a PhD program works. But there's a lot of structure in a US program, and there's a network of people that you work with as well. So that would be my advice.
Appreciate it.
Happy to talk more if you got any further questions. it's a big decision. 4 or 5 years of your life is a huge decision.
Professor, what's the job market like for PhD holders? Like, even if someone gets a US PhD and then is this super competitive? Yeah. Job market.
It's a lot better than, if you come out of the humanities, it's impossible to get an academic job unless you're from Harvard or Yale or Michigan. Sciences, hard sciences are a little better, but still very difficult. The business school PhDs, pretty much, I don't know anybody who didn't get a job. I think if you do a business PhD at a decent institution, you will get an academic job. It's probably the only field where, well, I shouldn't say that. If you do artificial intelligence, things like that, really hot topics, but, business in general, there are jobs for everybody who finishes a good PhD program. Now, we may be going into extreme disruptive change in the academic world. We don't know. And that might change the way things, it could change things. So.
Thank you. I see we have students who are graduating in December or maybe May 2021, so many first-year students. I'm so curious to know from the strategy professor's brain, how would you recommend students to strategically use their Thunderbird time to get the most value out of their degree?
Well, I think, I'm sure that they already know all the things they should be doing. I mean, taking advantage of all the opportunities for networking and those are pretty basic stuff. I can't say enough about our alumni, though. I think that's and more than I do, Helen, how you what the process is for tapping into that. But my sense is our alumni are very, very unique in the world of people going out to, finding business jobs. Our alumni are a little different than just about everywhere else in the world, and I think that's probably the unique thing that we have that maybe other places don't offer quite the same. But I don't know, Helen, how is that working now? Our alumni has evolved over the last few years.
Yeah, I think it's getting way better. I have an example I thought it's kind of nice. So 3 weeks ago, we reached out to around 200 alumni, inviting them to do mock interviews with students, and 188 responded right away. So I thought, oh, that's really nice that everyone is so swamped and COVID, lives are changing and all that, but they still are jumping on the opportunity to help T-Bird. So I thought,
oh, that's great. Yeah, I think that's something that's a very powerful part of Thunderbird, especially when it comes time to try to look at it international, because we have people all over the world. And as far as I can tell, they seem, if you can contact them, they'll be happy to chat. And we have, now, of course, it's so easy to talk to people in a way that it wasn't, only a few years ago. So you can have just one of these conversations with anybody, anywhere in the world. And so, I think that's the basics of it. I mean, you guys know more than I do. I don't know what the job, I don't really have a good feel for what's going on in the job market these days, and how it's like, how you do it, how you interview. And I don't know, it's obviously challenging, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting because the job market is definitely impacted, but at the same time, we're seeing there's so many finance, data jobs. They're just nonstop, and Sierra posts jobs all the time. We're still seeing so many opportunities. So it's an interesting dynamic right now.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, and so many companies are open to remote internships and open to new positions that are remote, because we saw this summer, we had quite a few students either lose an internship or became unpaid or stuff like that. So the fact that these companies are still willing to have interns, they know it's in a pandemic. It's actually really great to see all the different opportunities. And I've noticed this year, I think I'm posting more unique jobs and more interesting jobs than last year. Because last year it was a lot of sales, marketing, finance. Yeah, there's a lot of that this year too, but there's also different opportunities in different companies, small and large. So it's great to be able to see that even though COVID has had a huge impact, that there's still hope.
Well, You know, and now that I think about it, as we've learned that remote work actually works, an international job may mean you move somewhere and you work remotely from, you pick the country of your, the favorite country you want to live in, go and live there and work. I read that, I mean, there's a number of countries now that have these work visas that you don't actually work in the country, you go and live in the country. So I know Barbados has one, and I think you pay $5,000 a year or something, and it gives you the right to live in Barbados. And I don't think they have income taxes there. So you live in Barbados, you work in Germany, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
The opportunity to work remotely in your favorite country.
definitely.
Maybe once a year you have to go and see the people in the head office, and the rest of the time you're surfing in Barbados. So I would do that.
Yes, that's true. Alex, you have a question?
Yeah, hey Professor, thanks for joining us.
Right.
I'm starting kind of my process of trying to get an internship in strategy. And I'm just kind of curious your opinion on first, if the size of kind of company matters, because when you start thinking of strategic consulting, and they have like Bain, Accenture, and all those big companies. Yep. But from my standpoint, it's like, I guess I kind of am a little realistic knowing that those are the most sought after jobs, right? Yep. So I'm wondering if middle type firms are still, in your opinion, just as good, and then kind of the best process to go about attacking it, just because it's like, should I maybe go down the Thunderbird network and just trying to reach out to people? Yeah. What? Because it's it's a process.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, we've had people over the years who have been able to land jobs at the big firms. Not probably not McKinsey and BCG. That's pretty tough. The competition for those jobs is very, very stiff. But maybe a slight notch down, like Deloitte Touche, and that we've had people land jobs, but they work real hard on their network and know exactly what it is they want to do when they get into those firms. So consulting's if you work for BCG, you're going to be working with the world's biggest multinational companies. They're going to be your clients. And, you go down a level and it's just, if you go to a regional, smaller Scottsdale-based strategy consulting firm, you're probably going to be working on, regional Arizona clients, more than likely. But it doesn't matter where you end up. The business is still the same. It's, it's still consulting. It's still a pyramid, and it's still up or out. And I think you can get good experience at some of the smaller firms. They don't hire that many people. That's the challenge. And finding what jobs are available is also a challenge.
Yeah. So I guess you'd say if I was trying to get to another country like Madrid or London or something like that, is maybe target some smaller companies that are located there, or
maybe. I mean, again, it's the consulting world. I mean, there's sort of two, the McKinseys and BCGs and so on. They have their set of schools they go to, and they recruit a whole bunch of people every year. But and Thunderbird isn't going to be in that set. But that doesn't mean through a network, and maybe the alumni network, doesn't mean that would be impossible. If you have a particular skill, I mean, you got to have something that they want, some knowledge base that's maybe that you've had, that you brought with you, or some particular interest. If you have that, I mean, that's kind of the way the consulting business works. If you're not gonna get a job through, McKinsey will go to Harvard and they'll hire 50 people. If you're not going to be able to do it that way, you're going to have to go in a different way with something that they need that you have. And international could be it. I mean, if you've got a particular interest in Spain, you know a lot about Spain, you speak Spanish, that might work.
Yes. No, I really appreciate that. That helps, and just kind of looking at it in general, because like you said, I mean, consulting is so broad. It's kind of
It
it's
is.
tough to get through everything.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a great first, most consultants don't stay consultants for the rest of their careers. It's just the way the business works. But it's a great first sort of post-degree, graduate degree job, fantastic job, because you get so much experience with a lot of different companies and industries that you can then decide, most consultants end up working for one of the companies they consult with. That's typically what happens.
Yeah, Alex, we have so many alumni who are in the consulting area, so I'm happy we can talk offline and then connect you to some folks for more
Yeah,
conversation.
absolutely. Thank you.
Daniel, you have a question?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Hey, Daniel. Hi, Dan, how you doing?
Good. How's it going, Dr. Inkpen?
Good.
Good. All right. So I have a question. So it seems like you've been very successful in your professional career since your early years. And in strategy, we usually look at business cases, problems that organizations are trying to solve. And I am actually wondering, I'm sure you've been through hurdles and difficulties in your career journey. And I actually am curious to know how you have used your strategic mindset to help you go through those hurdles and overcome those difficulties that I'm sure you've had in your career.
That's a good question. My career was kind of, there was no plan. It just kind of happened. I didn't set out to do anything other than, get some education. And then what happened after each of because I did three different stints in education: my undergraduate degree, my master's degree, and then my PhD. And after each one of them, I kind of got a job but never had a plan. So I'm not sure I have good advice about how to strategically manage a career. Mine was kind of by accident, really. I ended up, Helen mentioned that, I work in the energy field, and I have for a long time worked in the energy field. And that was purely by accident. There was if you had asked me when I was, say working on my PhD or even when I first came to Thunderbird that I was going to write a book on the oil and gas industry, why would I do that? I don't know anything about energy. And it just happened. We had some energy clients in our executive education business. Those relationships got pretty deep, pretty significant. And for 12 years of my life, I spent half the year with one particular client, 25 weeks of the year. And you just learn about the industry by osmosis. Just because you're there, not because, and I liked it. It's global, it's international, it's important, it's evolving, it's changing. So, Daniel, I don't think I can tell you that I've done anything particularly well. It's just been a lot of luck. What's that? What do they say? The harder you work, the luckier you are. And I just kind of had some good opportunities, was in the right place at the right time. And I always knew that, in the academic world, that's what happens in academics. It's a very idiosyncratic career. It's hard to plan something. There's not a career path like in business where you kind of move up, or in consulting, because I came out of that world. I came out of the accounting world where there's a clear career path. It's up or out. And academics is up or out in a way, but the opportunities you have, it's just, because we have a lot of flexibility. We can say no in a way that most people in corporate jobs can't. If they ask me to do something, I can say, nah, I don't think I want to do that. Like this, I could have said, no, I don't want to do this. In the business world, if they say, you need to do this next week, be on this call. So I'm not sure you need to ask
thank you.
Ask your friends in business how they have managed to deal with it, because that's probably a better representation. That's why I like the academic world.
Yeah.
we can do whatever we want, sort of, especially at my stage.
That's
Thank you.
funny.
Thank you, Dr. Inkpen.
That's funny, Professor. Okay, Steve, you have a question? You're on. Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
There you go. Thanks for being here with us, Dr. Inkpen. How you doing?
Hey, Steve. Steve and I just wrote a case study. So we haven't had a chance to use it. I haven't had a chance to use it, but Steve and I wrote a case study on Walmart. So
Yes.
for me, a very interesting case study to learn. Steve really wrote it. I was not the fact checker, the proofreader. But so good to see you, Steve.
Good to see you too. So my question was really for, how difficult was it in changing careers, and what would you recommend to someone like myself, and I'm sure a lot of other Thunderbird students that are looking to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, it was a long time ago, but I gave up a good paying job with a lot of job security and a lot of potential to do other things with the degree I had, and I kind of gave it all up. I mean, it's pretty hard to become a CPA, and I did it, and then I stopped doing it, and I don't use it anymore. And but it got me my first job in Singapore, and then that got me. So it's hard. It's all of a sudden you go from an income to nothing. Then I went on a big trip and I spent all my money. So I basically had no money left. And I was starting a degree, probably like many of you, and you just, there are definitely some moments of thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't have quit my job. Maybe I should have stuck with it. But I think I wanted to get out of my hometown and get away from sort of the small town I was in, although that's where I am now, but that's for different reasons. I didn't want to work here. And so I had to quit my job. I mean, they tried to give me other jobs. They said, well, you should go into computer auditing. That's going to be a big thing. Computers are, and I said, nah, not interested in computers. And of course that maybe was the biggest mistake I ever made, because this was just at the time when, personal, PCs were happening, 1982. That was a time when everybody was getting PCs, and I could have got in on the ground floor of, maybe I would have joined Microsoft, who knows? So, it takes some soul searching, I think, but if it'll work out. I mean, especially if you've got, you've had good experience already, you do well in your program, you're going to do, something will come along. May not be what you thought it was going to be, it might be different, but something will definitely come along. But like I told Daniel, I never had a plan. It was just, sort of, hopefully it works out, and hopefully something comes along. And I think that's why, you can't go wrong with education, because something will come along. Somebody will say, that's what I want. This set of experiences and this type of degree. And, but there can be a lot of uncertainty at the time. I mean, I remember when I was in my MBA program. So I went through a 2-year MBA, full-time 2-year MBA program. And, same as you guys, there were job opportunities and they were being posted. And, I went to interviews. I interviewed with McKinsey and some of the Canadian investment banks, and I didn't like it much. It just didn't, I didn't see what I wanted. And then this kind of thing in Singapore came along just out of the blue, and I took it. So, if you haven't, unless you've got, major kind of family commitments, and I know some of you do, and that tends to be probably a little scarier than I was on my own. So, but if you've got, family commitments, it maybe is a little harder, a little more challenging, a little riskier. I'm sure you're going to do fine, Steve.
I appreciate it. I'm actually looking to get into the field that you got out of.
You don't want to
finance.
I thought you would join Target.
No.
No?
I'm done with retail.
You never know. You might be looking at retail from the other side, right?
Yeah.
You never
Well,
know.
Yeah,
Right?
definitely. Like if I could get a finance position in retail, then I would definitely do that.
Or a finance position that whatever. I mean, that that finances retail, or so because you know retail better than just about anybody.
That's
Thank you.
why I think sometimes we recommend students to attend as many sessions as possible, because sometimes you listen to the speaker and then oh, I totally don't want to do this. So that might be a good way to filter what you want or don't want to do.
Yeah.
Professor, first, because quite a few students are very interested in the energy sector, and I'm wondering, with COVID impacting energy sector, just kind of, I want to see.
Well, the thing about, and I know we've got, we've got a course we did in energy, and so we've had, a chance to talk to some students about energy. The energy business, we'll always need energy, right? It's not like we're ever going to not need energy. It's just the type of energy that we need is changing, and we are going through an energy transition, and energy transitions have happened in the past, and they tend to be, it'll take decades, but we're going through a very interesting energy transition, which is creating lots of interesting opportunities. The oil and gas industry is not dead, despite, what you may read, and it's not going to go away quickly. It'll be around for as long as you live, for sure. Not necessarily in the same size and scale that it is right now, but it's this year with COVID, it shrank, but it only shrank about 3%, which in the energy world is an enormous number, because when you've got supply and demand matched virtually equally, when the demand drops 3%, it causes a lot of problems. But it's not like the demand dropped 20%. That didn't happen, and it won't happen because we still need energy. But there's lots of exciting things happening on the non-oil and gas side as well. Fantastic things, in the automobile industry, of course. All sorts of opportunities in the automobile sector, which is energy. I mean, it's a user of energy. Solar, wind, all that stuff. I still think nuclear has a role, and I think there's some interesting technologies in the nuclear sector. So, the energy sector and it's a growing sector. The energy sector grows faster than the population grows. So it's never going to shrink until I guess when the population dramatically shrinks, maybe the energy sector will shrink, but I doubt it. I would encourage anyone interested in energy to pursue that, because it is such a critical industry. And, maybe it's not oil and gas, but on the renewable side, tremendous opportunities coming. Or the automotive side, I think there's some really interesting automotive companies that are going to come out of the sort of the electric vehicle sector. And within the traditional automobile companies, they're going to need new ideas and new people, and because that industry is being disrupted. So I think it's a great industry, and lots of opportunities.
I'm wondering, with all the different news channels, all the different things happening around the world, how do you keep yourself up to date or stay informed? Or are there recommended publications or certain things that you recommend students to check out every day?
Facebook and YouTube, isn't that what we all do?
Facebook and YouTube? Okay.
That's what I do. And I believe everything I read on Facebook, so.
What? Okay.
Yeah. No, I have a few go-to sort of, I've been reading 3 publications for decades. I read The Economist every week, which I think is the best news magazine out there. In fact, I've been watching some webinars that The Economist has been putting on, and the people that work there are so smart. I mean, it's just incredible how smart they are. so The Economist, and The Economist is a, its point of view is basically liberal democracy, free markets, not open borders, but, movement of people, globalization, all that stuff. That's The Economist. I read the Wall Street Journal, for a perspective. I like the news section. Obviously the opinion side is very, very much to the right. And I read the New York Times, for the other side. And then I read a bunch of other stuff, local stuff, but The Economist, the Wall Street Journal, and New York Times. I would read the Financial Times. I just don't have time. It's a good newspaper too, very good newspaper, but I don't have time. And I do read a ton of stuff, watch a ton of stuff on YouTube, I must say, because that's where I see. I don't have television, so that's the only place I can see, sort of, news shows and stuff like that. And so, because we whatever, cut the cord or whatever. I haven't had television for years. No cable, none of that stuff. Don't watch any cable news at all. But I do sometimes watch some like the Sunday news shows on YouTube. But I think The Economist, if there's only one thing you ever read The Economist. It's the best. It's the best.
Perfect. Yeah, I stopped watching the cable news a while ago because my heart rate just goes so crazy this year.
It'll drive you crazy. That's why YouTube's good, because you can watch, you can watch 2 minutes of it and turn it off, and or whatever you want to watch. That's the the old idea of sitting down at 6 o'clock at night and watching the nightly news. I mean, I never did that, but zero interest in doing that, anything like that, none. So podcasts, I mean, if there's so much good stuff out there, there's some podcasts, like one of my favorite podcasts is How I Built That with Guy Raz. Amazing podcast. He interviews, maybe you've heard it, he interviews entrepreneurs who built companies and all sorts of companies, you name it. He interviews them, and like from Southwest Airlines to what's the cycle place, Soul Cycle, and like cosmetics companies. And I mean, for people especially people who are interested in entrepreneurship, that's about as good as it gets. Because then you hear, Daniel asked about how you deal with whatever adversity. You should hear those people say. I mean, every one of them had so many, zigzags on the road to success. It's amazing. So that's pretty good, but hard to find the time.
Thank you, Professor. Have a final question for you, and if you don't mind, I combine two questions together.
Yep.
One is, I'm so curious about, you've seen so many students over the past how many years. Is there one characteristic that they all have that all lead them into really successful people or career or future? And two, is there a final takeaway for the students today?
I think, the reason I came to Thunderbird is because I wanted to go to a place. I only spent 2.5 years with my first job, and then Thunderbird opportunity came up and I took it. And it was because I wanted, an international oriented academic career. And I guess that's the thing that I've seen of, Thunderbird students is they are, for the most part, people that have a very global perspective. And I think that's, and we hear a lot of negative things about about globalization, and that's what makes our standard of living, and people don't understand that. That's the thing I think I've seen at Thunderbird that I didn't see. I didn't see it in my own MBA program, to be honest. I didn't have it. I hadn't done anything, and that's the thing I'm sort of amazed by, is how many sort of life experiences Thunderbird students have had at a pretty young age. Takeaways, we're obviously in this very unusual time. And it's harder, I think, when you're young, because it's it's so disruptive. I mean, for me, it's disruptive, but look, I had to cancel a trip to Morocco. I mean, that's not a life-threatening kind of, it's unfortunate I didn't get to go, but it's a lot harder when you're, in your 20s than it is, because it seems like a big chunk of your life that's being disrupted. But it will be over, and it will be over, and it will be, things will be different, but things will also be the same. And it's going to take another, 6 to 12 months, or maybe 6 to 18 months, but it will be over. And when it is over, there'll be a lot of opportunities, because we know whenever we come out of these, I mean, it's an economic downturn as well as a pandemic. I mean, they both go hand in hand. And whenever we come out of economic downturns, there are just tremendous opportunities for innovative things and interesting jobs and travel and so on. So I guess I just be positive. It's going to end. It's going to end. I'm confident it's going to end. Bill Gates said it's going to end. I believe Bill Gates. He's a smart guy. But it's not going to end on November 2nd, before November 2nd, contrary to what the politicians may say. This will be with us for a while. And we just have to make the best of it, and hopefully, learn something new, use this as an opportunity to learn some things. There's so many ways you can learn now that you couldn't when I was young, and make yourself, make your own core competency stronger. So when this is all over, or when you do move on from Thunderbird, you can do what you want to do.
Thank you, Professor Sierra. Take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Professor Inkpen, for being here today. It's been an awesome session, and thank you everyone who joined us and for all your great questions. I'm guessing that Professor Inkpen is open to you reaching out if you have questions. All of our professors are like that, and I'm really glad that everyone could make it. In October, we actually have 2 more Faculty Career Impact Program sessions. We have Professor Huang and we have Dr. Booth. So that's gonna be super awesome. November, so far, we have Professor Edens. We should have another one for November coming up. But we wanna say thank you so much and good luck this week and next week on your Session A finals. And everyone have an awesome week.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Inkpen.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
thank you.
Inkpen. Thank you.
Bye.